All right, well, good morning, everyone. It's now 11:30. We're gonna go ahead and kick off our pre-commission agenda. I don't have anything to share this morning, but does anyone have any housekeeping items or questions about the agenda? Okay, well, thank you. Director, over to you.
Madam President, Commissioners, good morning. Welcome back. A couple administrative items and then that I have to share with you. First off, I want to remind you all that ACHD will be closed on Friday. We're celebrating Veterans Day. On Saturday, you have in front of you the map and addresses to the two homes that we are assigned to rake up. And you're more than welcome to join us if your schedule permits. Such, but it's always a great event. Monday, I want to remind you all that for the morning, I'll be with the college, the School of Environment and the School of Arts. That's their first board meeting. I don't know how long that's going to go, but it should be interesting. And I'll report back to you as to what the comments were. Tuesday evening, we have the Idaho Business Review's Excellence in Finance Awards. And ACHC's Sherwin, there he is, right there, is an honoree, and we'll be out in force to support them. If you are wanting to attend, please let us know soon so we can make the appropriate arrangements. On Wednesday, the 15th, is the farewell event for Bill Connors. It's at the Boise Center, and so it starts at 5 p.m. On Thursday, we have the 16th annual ACHD Veterans Thursday 16th, the annual ACHD Veterans Thanksgiving Luncheon and such. It'll be over at Adams. You're all more than welcome to attend, and we'll be paying tribute to all of ACHD's veterans here at the Ada County Highway District. Also on Thursday, our communications team is hosting Neighborhoods in the Know here, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Communications Connection, sir.
Next Thursday. Okay, I'm sorry. Right, but next Thursday is Neighborhoods in the Know, where we're updating all the neighborhoods on what we do here. Again, you're more than welcome to attend if you like. And we have the PAG meeting later on that day. And such. So, Commissioners, what I'd like to do now is take you back in time, back to 1959. Commissioner Goldfarb, you and I are going to be the only ones that understand this up on the board. I want to remind the Commission that in 1959, gas cost 31 cents a gallon. Housing costs average about $19,000 for a very nice home. The number one song in the nation was "The Knife" by Bobby. Remember? And then the far side of the moon was revealed to the entire world in 1959. That was interesting. The Morris Mini Miner was introduced to the public. And the worst movie ever made, according to Hollywood, Plan 9 from Outer Space, starring Bela Lugosi, had its debut. And on November 5th, Jim Henson was born. And so Commissioners, today we're taking the opportunity to celebrate Commissioner Henson's birthday and such. The world's greatest exec did scour again the entire Ada County to find a rhubarb strawberry pie. Which we have. So that is my director's report. Madam President, if you would like to go to ease afterwards, I'm sure Commissioner Henson would love to cut that pie and share all the things we have to celebrate his birthday.
Thank you, Director. That sounds great. Yeah, happy birthday.
Thanks.
Commissioner Henson.
Found out that they will still feed me, and they do still need me now that I'm 64.
All right, well, with that, we'll be at ease until noon. Thanks all. red light thing. Oh, there it goes. Never mind. Thank you. Thank you. I just need to give you the signal next time. Like, cut the mic. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. It's now 12 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thanks for everyone that's in the audience and joining us online. I'll stand for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. I do not think we have any of those requests today. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. All right, so moving on to the regular agenda. Our first item is the school crossing at Warm Springs and Millbrook Way. This is a presentation by staff. Welcome, Director.
Madam President, Commissioners, again, good afternoon. Ken, if you could bring up the slide presentation, please. Commissioners, I'm here to talk to you today about a very important issue, and that is the soon opening of the Dallas Harris School on Warm Springs and Millbrook. Next slide, please. Commissioners, there has been a challenge through the school district. I won't get into specifics, but on May 2022, ACHD provided conditions of approval for this school to be built and constructed according to all plans that were given to the district. Unfortunately, for, again, doesn't matter, other reasons, the school district has not constructed the required flashers at that intersection, that west-looking intersection between Millbrook and Warm Springs. Commissioner Hanson visited the school district on last Thursday. I visited the area on Friday, met with several members of the public and, of course, our chair of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. And what we decided to do prior to that is we're going to move forward to install the flashers according to the plans we're going to have to do right now. Now, we did talk to the Boise School District again, and it was clear to us that after our meetings, they have taken forward steps to try to fix this. Unfortunately, it's clear to us that they won't have equipment in place till late December to make this work. So what I've instructed our team to do is to start. There are no electrical plans. There's nothing that we can build off of. So we're in the process right now of doing that. Ryan Head and his team is taking that great effort to move forward on. I have asked our team to place 2 of our very large mobile electronic messaging signs on those 2 areas that you can see right there to caution and alert the public that there is a new school that's going to be opening. Those will be in place no later than the 9th. Are they in place now, right? Today. They'll be in place today, then, a day early, to give the motoring, everybody, an idea of what's going to be happening at this area. So again, from that picture, looking to the west, and so that you can see there's somewhat of a sidewalk or crosswalk there, but unfortunately, that's where the flashers were supposed to be done by the district. We're putting them in. Now, just to be, our we're doing a full court press on this, but the best we're gonna be able to do is probably by 4 December, because we're starting from scratch, on this to make this happen. Those caution signs will stay in place until the flashers are put in and everything's activated across the board. I did talk to General Counsel on this. We will be billing the school district on this again, and I'm sure we'll have discussions about that as time goes on. But commissioners, it's very important that we as an organization do everything possible to ensure safe crossings for all those kids. And if you haven't been out there, that area is growing something fierce. There's a daycare center right over here that a lot of parking issues across the board, a lot of building going on, a lot of children and folks going across back and forth. So at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. I want to make sure you knew this is going to be north of $100,000 easily, but money well spent from my perspective to make this work and such. I received a letter this morning, or excuse me, late last night. It's in front of you from I believe the chair of the PTO out there. I responded accordingly. I think Commissioner Hanson and Commissioner Pickering, you might have seen my response on this. That's something we can continue to look toward, but that's not something I'm going to look at right now. I need to get this fixed or set up as we move forward. If you look at the middle picture, looking north, I think there's some things we can do there to increase and enhance safety for all users in the area. It's sort of like a wide open path or road through there. We could probably do a couple things to enhance the safety of that going forward. That'll be next steps going forward. But the primary consideration is that side of Millbrook and Warm Springs. And commissioners, that's what we're doing. And so if you have any questions for me or any additional directions, more to take it, but we're off and running.
Director, can you explain what type of cross? Or?
It'd be the hybrid flashers and such. It'll match the ones that the development put in on this side of the crosswalk and stuff. Now, I've also asked our team to look carefully where those, and it's hard to see in this picture, but the red flag warning signs, they're awfully close to that, to this intersection. So I've asked our team to go out and see if we should move them a little bit further to give drivers a little bit more of an idea that there is something coming. But I also think those are big message boards will be very obvious and such. So I will keep you posted. But again, I want you to know this is a minimum of 4-week, if nothing goes wrong, issue. But I think it's the right thing to do, and we're moving forward on it.
Thanks, Director. Questions for the Director?
Yes.
Commissioner Goldthorpe, excuse me.
Now, we need to put fiber optics in and everything starting from scratch there, right? There's nothing
there right now.
Okay.
That's again, so our engineers, our team, Ryan's team, we are building the electrical engineering plan. We've got to go out and do all the different research and such to make this work. And so we know we'll get it done, but I want to make sure there's no unintended expectations that it'll be done by tomorrow. It's not going to be.
A follow-up. We really haven't had a problem like this with the school district since the lights around Owyhee High School, correct?
Not that I'm aware of, Commissioner.
Okay.
I'm Madam President, Commissioner, not that I'm aware of.
Well, that's good, but this distresses me that folks that are supposed to be concerned about children don't honor their obligations.
Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, Director, just 2 quick questions. I don't know if we can pull those pictures back up.
I bet we can.
First of all, those temporary signs that are going to be out there, are they going to flash 24/7, or is it just a message that's only during the pedestrian hours?
24/7 message across for all drivers.
Okay, and then
all users.
And then I'm looking at this picture, the left image. It looks like we've got a straight section of sidewalk, and then that curving section that kind of wraps around to the other crosswalk. That sidewalk that you see at the very bottom of the image on the left, does it continue on at all, or does it end just there?
I believe it ends there, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to check again. I don't remember. No, it continues on.
And so look, if we look to the right, we can't see anything, but does it go all the way up to those, I guess, apartments or something?
Yeah, on the right, there's none. It goes to the daycare center, And then as you continue to go down the road, it goes to the buildings that are being constructed in that area. But there's nothing on on Millbrook, Warm Springs looking east.
Okay, that's on the left side of the image, right?
Well, if you're on Tyler, looking west, looking north, looking east,
I guess I'm confused about my directions when I look at those pictures.
okay.
I'm uncertain. I'm assuming the curvature, I'm assuming the image is looking, no, I guess my assumption is wrong on that.
Okay, here we are on Warm Springs.
See, the sidewalk goes all the way around on that side, but on that side, the school side, there's nothing. It just sort of stops and then goes into the desert.
There's no sidewalk
No.
along Warm Springs.
Okay,
As you can see, going into Millbrook, going north in that area, it's kind of a wide open. There's not much paint, not much anything there.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. Commissioner Hanson.
Madam President and Director, thank you very much. I really appreciate the action. I really appreciate the Barber Neighborhood Association. I know they're going to be listening to this description and looking at what's coming. The Safe Routes to School coordinator and Lisa, she got parents to connect to the right people and the PTO. It's so critical that the kids be visible to the drivers and the drivers respond to that. And as you can see, if you go out there, I would encourage everybody to go out there. There's a brand new playground, so the kids aren't just going to be going at the exact time that school starts or school gets out. They're going to be going over there constantly to go and enjoy their new school and their new playground. So it's so important that everybody knows, even those who are driving through on this stretch of Warm Springs for the first time, that this is a school zone and that they should react, that there's lots of kids. And so prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth, we don't even want to imagine what might happen if a driver is lulled into thinking that they can drive quickly along and they're not going to run into any kids crossing back and forth. So this is super important, and I look forward to the next steps. I know we have a specific request that we upgrade that RRFP because most of the crossings at the schools are either full signals. These are in Boise School District, are full signals that you push and it's a stop, or are the hawk signals, the hybrid beacon is what it's called. And so I know that we have a request to go to two, and I'd like us to look into, which in the long run is the best investment, and that we move on that as soon as we can. So I appreciate this very much. I think it's so critical. That's the one thing that I hope that I was most nervous about with the opening of this new school. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Director. Moving on to item number 2, it's a vacation for Perch Meadows subdivision. It's a public hearing and adoption resolution number 2412 to vacate a parcel of land. This is a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Welcome, Mr. Serdar.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, David Serdar, right-of-way supervisor for Ada County Highway District. As stated, this is a public hearing and decision briefing for a vacation near Ulmer Lane, near Perch Meadows subdivision. Yeah. Sorry about the struggle with the clicker.
Just needed time to warm up.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. The proposed vacation is a portion of Ulmer Lane. The vacation is split into an A and B areas. And the total of that area is 8,276 square feet. At the time of application, Garden City expressed their desire that the right-of-way be preserved for a trail or pathway. HDHD staff worked with both the applicant and the city and Garden City for a compromise that between the two parties as to the amount of the vacation. What's happening is ACHD will retain a portion of the right-of-way for a future trail or pathway if that comes to fruition. The valuation of the property was based on an estimate from an appraisal that was provided by the applicant. Staff recommends the full payment of $89,467.99 for the vacation. So as you can see here, we're just south of State Street. There's a church up there on the corner. We're about a half mile south of State Street there. This is a little more close up of the vacation. Right-of-way vacation area A is in red. Right-of-way vacation area B is in green. That little gap there is so that the common lot can connect to the potential trail from the subdivision that is going in. The area of the right-of-way that ACHD is retaining is not highlighted, but can be seen a little bit with that light blue there. So that's what ACHD will be retaining as part of this vacation. It is staff recommendation that the commission adopt and sign resolution number 2412 authorizing the proposed vacation of public right-of-way as applicant has completed the commission and staff requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Serdar. Any questions for Dave, Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Hey, Dave, would you go back to the map of the area?
That one?
Is there one that's out a little further?
Sure.
Yeah, that one. What's going to be happening as we head south towards the river? Anything? As far as in our crystal ball or the future?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I think there is a desire from Garden City that a trail goes south. I don't know all the specifics of it, but my understanding is there are a few hurdles for that, but eventually they'd want to connect that pathway more to the south.
How far
But
away?
that would be farther than even our right-of-way goes.
Sure. How far away are we from the green belt there?
I don't have an exact measurement, but I would assume about a half a mile.
And it's
Quarter
already developed private property south of where we're talking.
mile. Correct.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because of what information was given to the Bicycle Advisory Committee about the connection to the green belt that's just slightly to the west here. That's looking like it's going to be closed. And so there'd be 3 miles on either way before someone can access the green belt without being out on State Street and being in danger there. So that's the reason for my questions.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Yeah, I hope the mayor is successful with the property owners trying to get another connection.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Dave, I'm wondering if we could go back to the parcel map, the closer view that we had a moment ago that shows.
That one?
There we go. Yeah. I just want to be sure that I'm clear which portion is the the right-of-way that's being retained for purposes of a future trail. Is that, I see that blue line there parallel to the red and green areas. Is the part that we're retaining, the part that's, say, between the red and the blue, is that the part that we're talking about that's being retained as right-of-way?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that portion that the arrow's on, as well as the north-south portion on the left side or west side, yeah, right there. Right there. There's a canal, or Omer, the canal's right in between there. And then,
Okay.
then there's the right-of-way. The arrow's correct, right
this-
on the right of way, right
So the
there.
space where the arrow is, or was just a moment ago, that's where that's the sections being retained, north-south.
Commissioner McKinney, Madam President, yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
All right, I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
Madam President, what's the width of that part
Mhm.
that's being retained? I don't get a sense of how wide it is. Is that
I believe we split this in half and each section was 15 feet.
15 feet? Okay.
And Dave, on the edge of Ulmer Lane there, is that just a dirt path or what is that right there?
Madam President, that in between Ulmer Lane and
The
the
canal.
path
Mhm.
is actually, it's like a canal or a ditch, kind of a drain ditch. It's a water feature, not a water feature, kind of a waterway.
But I'm talking about the section that looks like the color is the same as the road. Is that just a dirt, like shoulder or, and how, yeah.
Yes, Madam President, you're correct. Can I move the arrow? Oh. So just to kind of bring a bigger picture to this, the green belt down here ends on the north side of the river. And this is about a half mile away from that. And because of that, Garden City's green belt you have to come along this road. You drive in the road, there's a little bit of a shoulder here, and you come all the way up to here, and then the green belt goes this way, right along here. This is fine. And so the right of way is between this red line, the west line of what the proposed right of way, and the blue line is the edge of the edge of our boundary for right of way. And so this whole strip will be preserved as a pathway in conjunction with Garden City. This is a ditch right along here. It's kind of a crummy ditch, but it's big enough that creating a structure over it is a challenge. But again, I think Garden City wants this eventually. This south of here, you have another subdivision right here. And then you have a large property owner here in order to, if you're ever going to extend it. But I think any extension would go down to this Sakana Drive, and that's the connection. That's a shorter connection to the Greenbow, which comes right over here. So I'm just trying to put the trail in perspective for you. And what he's obviously trying to do is get more land to support his development.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Any other questions? And remind us again, Dave, what's the actual size of the vacation total?
Total take is, the total vacation in parcel A is just 0.13 acres and B is 0.06 acres for a total of 0.19 acres.
Thank you. So if there's no other questions for staff,
I just have one,
Oh,
just
so
clarifying,
Commissioner Hanson.
just want to clarify, so to put a multi-use path down that 15-foot, we have enough of the shy distance on both sides and the bank of the canal in order to put that in? Is that the concept of having that, retaining that width?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, we have worked with Garden City, and they did confirm that the proposal of splitting that right away would be sufficient for them. So we haven't done any, in-depth engineering on it, no, but that was the amount that they agreed to.
and Dave, I just want to confirm though that it was like, yes, because we can work within what amount of space there is for a pathway, right? Okay,
Madam President, correct.
okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we have that on the record then. Okay. All right. So if there's no other questions, is there anyone in the audience or online that would like to testify on this issue?
The applicant is online.
Okay. Oh, is this Jim? Mr.
You'll, yes, and you'll need to unmute yourself.
Welcome, Mr. Jewett.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Madam President, Commissioners, my name is Jim Jewett. My address is 4123 West Garnet, Boise, Idaho.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
So, thank you. So I appreciate Dave for your presentation. This has been kind of a struggle to get to this point working with Garden City, but we all have agreed to this splitting of the right-of-way. Our reason for wanting the right-of-way is just a weed patch right now. And when we platted our lots in the Perch Meadow subdivision, we made them a little bit less than depth, thinking we were going to get this right-of-way. So we're just adding that 15 feet to the existing houses to make them a little bit nicer backyard. That's all we're trying to do here, and eliminate the weed patch by putting them as part of people's yards. A little history on this. Obviously, this property dedicated this right-of-way some years back for the purpose of Omer Lane. Some 20 years ago, the subdivisions to the west entered into an agreement with ACHD to move Omer Lane to the west of the canal and vacating their half of that right-of-way to them. And that's currently owned by the Homeowner Association directly to our west. We obviously did not have access to Omer Lane at that point in time. And then when we did our subdivision, we built internal streets to access all our lots. And we did not, with an agreement with Garden City and ACHD, did not take access to Omer Lane in any sort. I agree with Dave's presentation, except for valuation. $89,000 to give us back something that we gave originally and were not provided access off of Omer Lane seems to be a high price to pay for it was a 0.19 of an acre. That's $400,000 or $500,000 an acre. I'm having a problem with that. We're not benefiting financially. We're just giving that 15 feet to those 6 property owners that we will eventually sell houses to along that strip. So we would ask the commission for consideration on that value to be a bit more fair. With that, I would stand for any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Jewett. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, Mr. Jewett, do you have any other appraisals for us to consider?
The appraisal I provided Dave was just the appraisal when we did the development. When I acquired the property, I paid far less than that. Dave provided me his calculations. I don't quite get where they're coming from out of that appraisal, but the appraisal that was done was for my development loan when I developed it. So I can tell you I did not pay $400,000 or $500,000 an acre for it.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Madam
McKinney.
President, so Mr. Jewett, let me just be clear about what it is you're saying. You're saying that you dispute the dollar amount for this vacation. Is that what you're saying? So in other words,
I'm sorry, commissioners. I'm saying I don't understand the valuation. To be excessive to give me back property that this property gave ACHD to build a right-of-way, which they agreed with some other developer to move to the other side of the canal and construct it somewhere else.
Okay, well, so it strikes me that if the applicant is not in agreement with the amount, that's an issue that would need to be worked out, I presume, with our legal department. So perhaps we could get our general counsel to inform us on this as to what we should or shouldn't do at this point.
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Steve Price, General Counsel. Sound like a broken record, but On vacations, your first order of business is to determine whether continuation of this right-of-way is in the public's best interest. That's the first one. Then the second part of that is the commission has discretion to charge the fair market value. And the statute just says fair market value. We treat all of our vacation applications with this particular methodology. It's a, across the fence valuation. Across the fence, that property is now developed, and so it has a significant increase in its value. The commission does have the discretion to charge a lesser amount than what's proposed, but that would be a deviation from our past practices.
Commissioner, can you
Now,
follow up?
excuse me, Madam President, in terms of process, the application that's before you has the imposition of the appraised value of $89,000. So you can either approve the vacation, which by doing that would assess the $89,000, or you can deny the application. And if he does not want to pay that $89,000, then he doesn't pay it and the vacation doesn't go forward, but that would be down the road. Once you've approved it, the conditions of the approval is that he pays the fair market value of $89,000. If he doesn't complete that condition, then the vacation is void.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yes, Steve, would you clarify to me how we got that right away in the first place?
Well, that was an old, kind of a farm property. An old lady owned that parcel, owned it, her and her husband, for years. They had cattle on there. I don't know how they acquired it, but that is the property that Mr. Jewett bought, was from them or her estate, I think. But in terms of, this question about Ulmer Lane and moving, we had that right of way well before that, and I don't know whether we paid for it or whether it was dedicated as part of a development. But that is not a basis for...
But it wasn't something that Mr. Ulmer gave us, correct?
That I'm aware of. No, he may have, but I don't know. We don't have that. We'd have to go back and look.
Okay. Can I ask Mr. Ulmer that question right now?
Well, Mr. Ulmer's long gone.
Oh, I'm sorry,
and
Mr.
bless
Jewett.
his soul.
Mr. Jewett.
But
I'm
Mr.
old.
Jewett he's available for any questions, and he very well may know. I'm sure he's seen the title report.
Mr. Jewett, you did not convey this right away to ACHD, correct?
I did not. It was dedicated as part of an old plat years ago for, as well as the property to our west, for Ulmer Lane. I would also like to say I agree with Council Price in the analogy that it's in the discretion of the commission what or how much they charge for vacation of right-of-way. And we are not in agreement with this dollar amount. I also wanted to be known that in discussing this with Dave all through the process, he told me it was my right to ask for a reduction at this hearing. And that this was the appropriate time to discuss it was at this hearing. So that's what I'm doing. And so if I'm doing it in error, I have to say it was because of the advice I was given. I did not find out about this amount till maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And I talked to Dave immediately at that point and says, I'm not in agreement to this. I don't know where you even came up with the dollar amount. And he said it was based on some $3 million. I don't know where that number even comes from. And all I got was a formula he sent me in a text.
Mr. Jewett, that's really information for us to know. And I'm wondering do you just need more time to talk to staff about how we arrived at that number? Because we can defer this to some other time if that.
He can get his own appraisal too.
And you could get, could you get?
Madam President, we have consumers that have bought one house along that strip that we told them we would get them this this 15-foot right-of-way. They're aware of this hearing. They're concerned about what's going to happen. I believe that we need to put this item to bed. I don't know that any more negotiations with Dave is going to come up with a different amount. He told me that you guys had the discretion to any amount, and then your counsel just said that the statute was up to the commission's discretion. I'm asking the commission to come to a compromise that's not $89,000. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, Commissioner Goldthorpe?
You know, in the 10 years, close to 10 years I've been on the commission, we've had a number of occasions when we could adjust prices. But it's always been with, let's call it competing appraisals. And the commission then has a factual basis for making a decision to lower a price. And we don't have that here. So I really don't know that out of the goodness of our hearts, if we decided to lower this price, if we just be setting ourselves up for problems down the road.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, with that, I'm gonna go ahead. Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this issue? Thank you, Mr. Jewett. Is there anyone else, Stacy?
We don't have anybody signed up.
Okay, a last call for anyone in the audience. Okay, well, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. Commissioners,
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I'm inclined to agree with Commissioner Goldthorpe on this. We don't really have any basis we would just be shooting in the dark to lower the amount. We just have one amount that we've got. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Dave indicated in his presentation that 89,000 number came from an appraisal that had been done in the past. That's my understanding. In any case, an additional consideration is that most of the cases where we have on our own action decided to downwardly adjust or even eliminate a cost on a vacation, they've typically been in cases where it's a private homeowner. It's not in the case where we're dealing with a developer who's developing a large tract of land, and selling homes on it. So it doesn't have quite the same situation as some of those others. And for that reason, it strikes me that if we don't delay this, and it sounds like the applicant doesn't want to delay, we just vote up or down on what's presented here, and that's really kind of all that we can do.
Yep, so is there a motion?
I would be willing to move that we approve the, resolution number 2412 to vacate the parcel of land for the Park Meadows subdivision.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I just want to echo Commissioner Goldthorpe and McKinney's points. And thank you, Mr. Jewett, for being here and sharing, giving us some important background. And Dave, of course, for your work. All right, if there's no other discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on to item number 3, it's the Franklin Street Neighborhood Improvement Concept. This is an adoption hearing with a request for adoption. Mr. Edson Batista.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon, Commission. For the record, my name is Edson Bautista, ACAC Senior Transportation Planner. In today's agenda item, staff will present the Franklin Street Neighborhood Improvement Concept, draft concept, including the proposed improvement and a summary of the work done through this project. In this presentation, staff will go over the planning areas, the purpose and goals, public outreach, proposed improvements, and the staff recommendation. As a reminder, Commission, in this slide, we present an overview map of the bike corridor. This included the changes recommended by directed by the Commission during the October 11th work session. And this corridor was identified through the Roadways to Bikeway Master Plan and is part of our ACAC Regional Low Stress Network. Some of the key destinations along this corridor includes Boise High School, Longfellow Elementary School, Fort Boise Park, Boise Bike Park, Boise Downtown, and several of our other bikeways like 18th Street, 11th Street, 8th Street, and Bannock Street Bikeway. The Franklin Street concept followed the goals and objectives established in the low stress network and the livable street guidelines, including bicycle and pedestrian improvement, intersection improvements, ADA improvements, pavement maintenance, and drainage improvements. On this slide, we want to recognize the team that worked on this project, including our partner agency from the city of Boise, Boise School District, as well as our consultant, Jacobs. As presented during the October 11th work session, the consultant and staff conducted a comprehensive public outreach effort where we engaged the ACSD advisory committees, neighborhood association, partner agency, and the general public to review the corridor, identify areas of improvement, and ultimately identify proposed improvements along the project route. In this slide, we present the first segment, which goes from Franklin Street, Ellis Ave to 4th Street. This following the commission and public feedback during the October work session, staff updated the draft concept to reflect a raised intersection at 16th Street and 9th Street, as well as 15th Street, including the addition of the pavement preservation treatment throughout this segment. Consistent with commission guidance, staff will review and evaluate the additional bulb outs at intersection where pedestrian ramps will be upgraded to ADA standards. For segment 2, from 4th Street to Reserve Street, the proposed improvements will continue to be the corridor branding and wayfinding sign and share lane markings up to Robin Road, where it changes to the city of Boise's jurisdiction, all the way to Reserve Street. The design and construction of proposed improvement in this section will be constructed in coordination with the city of Boise. Following commission directions, staff removed segment 3 and 4. And updated the concept to reflect the study area presented in this slide, which goes from Reserve Street to Costin Street. This will evaluate streets along this area for bicycle and pedestrian improvement, including traffic calming. This future concept study will be evaluated in the upcoming integrated fire work plan. The proposed improvements presented in the Franklin Street neighborhood improvement draft concept total cost estimates to $1.2 million. Planning Commission, staff would like to recommend the adoption of the Franklin Street neighborhood improvement concept as written.
Thanks, Ensign. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Just want to say thank you for listening to the last time this was up and adjusting that other area of the project for a later time. Commissioner Hanson?
Madam President and Ensign, thanks. Yes, I appreciate the incorporation of the recommendations, especially separating out because most people are not going to write the entire thing. It's really about pieces of an area that needs pavement preservation. This is the one and done strategy because pavement preservation is the biggest chunk of change for the $1.2 million price tag. I would ask, and the raised crosswalks are on the one-way streets, the raised, intersections, because we have seen that is traffic calming for as people drive on those one-ways. I'm hoping we can reevaluate with the city of Boise and CCGC whether those one-way streets are really warranted down the road. And since this isn't going to be built right away, I would hope that conversation happens so that we can determine that. The last thing is I appreciate the consideration of curb extensions, the evaluation of each curb extension. I would ask that the staff come back to us and to the pedestrian advisory group if the decision or recommendation, I should say, of staff is not to do curb extensions or bulb outs. Come back to us, come back to the pedestrian advisory group to say why that isn't the case, so that it's not just automatically, we considered it and we're moving on, here's a 95% design concept for you to look at. So that's what I would hope would happen.
Commissioner Gold.
Yeah, thanks. I would agree with Commissioner Hanson in that, and just to re-verify that we're going to be looking at all of the intersections through the design process, right? To make sure they're ADA compliant and bulb outs and all of that are considered. Is that correct?
Madam President, Commissioner Gold, yes, absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
if I may, Edison, I just want to clarify and make sure that I understand. Commissioner Hanson talked about this as primarily a pavement maintenance project. Is that correct, or is that? I want to make sure I'm not confusing this with a different project. Is this solely going to be the bicycle and pedestrian improvements, or is it also repaving the entire this corridor?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, the addition of the pavement improvement was incorporated later on as a practice that we're implemented now to to provide a better smooth surface to the roadway. Initially, it began as a bikeway corridor project, but as time goes on, and following guidance of the going once, we wanted to make sure that we incorporate all the improvements that would go along this section. So the pavement preservation was included after in the last version of the project. So for the most part, it was a bicycle pedestrian improvement project, and then incorporated these additional maintenance components.
Okay, so in other words, it wasn't a pavement improvement project to which we added some bicycle and pedestrian improvements. It was the other way around. It was a bicycle and pedestrian project to which we have now added some pavement improvements.
Correct.
What's the current pavement surface rating for the streets in this section?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, at this moment, I don't have that information on me. That's something that, so sorry for that. I can go back and look for that information and get it back to you.
I remember you highlighted it before, and it was quite poor, wasn't it? I thought you highlighted it before, Edison.
Madam President, I think I highlighted it when you was in Bannock Street, not the Franklin. So I think that's
gotcha.
where.
Getting confused with Bannock. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Okay, any other questions, Commissioner McKinney?
No, I don't think so.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
One of the things I just wanted to clarify, and I already know the answer to this once and done concept that we came up with a few years ago, which we'd been talking about for years before that, and then decided, oh, this is a great idea. What doing it this way actually guarantees us is that we won't have to tear the thing out, do a $1 million project or whatever it is, several $100,000 for the bicycle and pedestrian improvements. We'd have to tear them all out in just a very few years when we went to do the pavement preservation anyway. So we're doing both of them together in this particular plan instead of piecemeal. That would be much more expensive. Is that true?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions for staff at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
We do have somebody signed up for testimony.
Beautiful.
Yes, Mr.
Sorry, I just
Mr.
forgot.
Anderson.
Sorry about that. Welcome, Mr. Anderson. Please state your name and address for the record.
Clancy Anderson, 4611 North Shirley Avenue, Boise. Madam President and Commissioners, I fully support the Franklin Neighborhood Improvement Plan. I had some concerns, ADA concerns, but Edison addressed those, and I think that was kind of the same concerns that Jim had, or Commissioner Hanson had, regarding some of the other curb ramps there are some definitely that weren't on that map specifically, but will need to be addressed to bring them up to ADA compliancy. Franklin is a great connection into downtown, whether you're coming from the north end or coming from Northwest Boise. It'll also be a good connection for those looking to get to or from the east end without going through downtown. Thank you to staff for making sure the crossings will be safe and effective and create great places to walk and bike. And thank you to the commission to make sure that projects like this are being considered and constructed. And real quick, I'm gonna also comment about Desert, since that's next. I support that project. I do think, though, that it should be extended to get past the bridge over the canal. Just because there's no reason to, because there are kids that do, in that walk plan, that do walk over from Maple Grove. So including the connection to Maple Grove would be much improved. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Clancy. Any questions for Clancy? Is there anyone else that would like to testify on this issue? Okay, well, my apologies for jumping the gun on this one a little bit. So commissioners, it's back over to us for a discussion and a motion.
Madam President,
Commissioner Gold.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Franklin Street Neighborhood Improvement Concept.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I just want to add a couple of words on this. I think one of the challenges, and I've talked about this in the past, when you look at a project like this, all of those things look great. Speed tables, raised intersections, bulb outs, pedestrian crossings, and so on. And no one ever wants to, no one ever wants things to be unsafe. And when we look at things like that, the inclination is to say, yeah, absolutely, let's do all these things. The challenge is, and part of the challenge I think was suggested by my questioning of Edison. What we've got here is we've got a large number of these bicycle and pedestrian projects that are already in the pipeline. And now, to the extent that, our community programs budget is now about 1/3 of our entire capital improvement budget. And each one of these by themselves, if we look at them in isolation, they look like great projects. The trouble is, if we step back and look at the total number that we've got, and when we add to it this, the one and done concept that was discussed, meaning that now suddenly each one of these community programs is now also a pavement improvement program. So now their cost is going up dramatically. We haven't ever stepped back and said, let's look at the whole scope of things and decide, are we putting our resources, are we using the resources effectively and appropriately, given the large number of other types of projects, many of which are just sitting and we're not moving forward simply because of budgetary reasons. And, and so when I look at a project like this and I realize that we haven't really had that discussion to say, are our priorities in total where they ought to be, I think that discussion needs to be had before we make specific decisions on all of these projects going forward. And that's why I would look at this and I would say, no, I can't approve it right now. I'd like to see a bigger picture of everything that's in the pipeline and how much of our resources that's going to take versus other types of projects that also need to be done and that are being, set aside or delayed. So that's my reason. That's my concern.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinney. I think if you want to have a deeper discussion about how all these projects fit and what isn't, in your words, isn't being constructed because of funding or whatever, we can have that discussion. I think if you just want to lead on those points, I know staff are already collecting some great data points around the CIP work, things like that, where we could have that structured discussion and not like necessarily grandstand these important projects in the meantime. So if you want to provide some direction about what you'd like to see in that discussion at another time, that would be great, and we can organize that. But Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, Madam President, just by way of information, we had that discussion ad nauseum several times over the years. And right now, the majority of this commission is in no way, shape, or form objecting to the way we're doing this. We do concept plans, we do preliminary designs, we do design plans, we scope. Some of these plans that we do will not even happen for quite a number of years. This is not some of them are not construction bids. And this, this contains some of that. And we know what's going to happen going forward because this is going to happen soon. Some of them that we do don't happen till much later, and some of them don't even have a date certain to build. So this, this is just how we do it so we don't get stuck making knee-jerk, stupid decisions that aren't in the best interests of the entire county. Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
Oh, I just wanted to clarify, we're not doing this suddenly. Franklin's been around for a long time, and we are moving forward on lots of projects. We just put them on the consent agenda. They overwhelmingly benefit motor vehicles. And today we approved 3 bridges over in the southwest part of the county, and that's just for the professional services agreement. I mean, that's not for the design and the construction. This is the initial professional services agreement with elite engineers for a design on 3 bridges. So we are moving forward on lots of them, but we tend to put those on the consent agenda. We don't sit and talk about them. But I do agree with Commissioner McKinney. We should talk about them. So I would suggest we bring some of these forward to the commission so we can put it in a larger context. So the perception isn't that we're not moving forward on those. Staff is doing a good job moving forward with what we approved in the budget and the 5-year work plan, and in the capital improvements plan. And there's some really big ticket items in there. And the other is, of course, that this road wasn't designed. It was designed many, many, many years ago, and it serves many different functions. We don't design them like this today. And so when we do go back and address concerns, safety concerns, pavement management concerns, I really appreciate the staff puts it all together, does it in an efficient way. And then we don't have to do it until your grandkids are up here serving on the commission. Fix it up.
Commissioner Gold.
Thanks, Madam President. I just want to agree with Commissioner Goldthorpe's comment about how these come out of a long planning effort and years of engagement with neighborhoods and partner agencies. And so they're not just being plucked out of the air. They stem from long planning efforts. And so I think that's important to keep in mind. A lot of those documents were also linked to this in the packet. So
thank you. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Congratulations, Ensign. Thank you. All right. We're moving on to item number 4, the Amity Road, Cloverdale Road to 5 Mile Road Consultant Agreement Approval Project for
Say you don't look like
52
Sorry.
14.
We're not there quite yet.
Welcome, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the commission. This item was requested to be removed from the consent agenda. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. Just as a brief summary, this is a professional services agreement, which is just our agreement we do to hire a design consultant to start the process of design for this segment of Amity Road between Cloverdale and 5 Mile. The details are in the packet, and I'm glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Justin, for your flexibility. Commissioner Hanson, did you have any questions?
I just had a couple questions. I appreciate you. When this was originally on the agenda for October 25th, the scope of work wasn't attached. And so it kind of made sense. We didn't have a scope of work to discuss and evaluate. I wonder, with all the improvements we're having in working with consultants, how has the scope of work changed? I was looking, for example, for how are we encouraging this consultant to do to design something to a design speed. So what's the design speed for this segment? And then I had other questions about the side streets. That we have, we're having them design something for one intersection, but they're obviously anybody can cross. I'm really pleased that we'll be using the multi-use pathway on either side. So those are my questions. And the other is there's no reference to LTS. What is the the consultant expected to produce with respect to LTS. Oh, and there's one third question, which is just a request, is in the phasing when we have 30% and 75%, 95%. We haven't. I would ask that in our standard language for the scope is that we bring the advisory committees in at an early stage to identify the things that perhaps we haven't picked up on. So there's sort of a standard process, have the advisory committees take a look at what's in the works early, and probably solves those problems. So that's everything all at once.
Madam President.
Do you want to give Justin a time to answer? Or do you want to?
Oh, sure.
Okay, Justin, do you want to take those questions?
Well, just to answer briefly, and thank you, commissioners. These documents, it's hard to always include every detail right at the beginning of the project. We do our best. The primary goal is to establish a framework under which we can design the project. Specifically about the question of what have we done to change the scope of work, I do want to highlight on page 2, it says a traffic safety report will be completed as part of this project during the 30% design stage. The safety report will evaluate options to improve safety along the project corridor for all users. As part of the safety analysis, we will conduct a site visit with ACHD team to identify safety concerns, which includes all the things the commission has discussed. Speed, posted speed versus design speed, all of those things, speed mitigation, within the project limits and provide potential solutions. The safety report will evaluate the 5-year crash history and provide recommendations based on FHWA crash reduction factors, land use, and the appropriate design and post speed limits based on the facility type and use. So we're also going to be potentially looking at a safety benefit cost analysis as described by ITD and its traffic crash reduction documentation. And this is one of ACHD's first projects to include this type of report. And this is all as an outcome of our initiative last year and our work with the consultants to include this type of work in these types of design contracts. And so that's the specific language in the consultant agreement and the description that we included in this project specifically to ensure that all of those things we've been discussing over the last 12 months, in Commissioner Hansen's case, many more months than that, sir, to really ensure that our consultants are looking at this. So I know that may not describe every single detail that we're going to look at, but the intent of that report and the site visit and all of the things that are discussed here at the 30% phase is to highlight all of those issues right at the beginning. That's the intent. And we're going to work with the consultants to flesh this out. This is the first time we've included it in a project like this, and we're going to learn how this goes. They're going to have ideas. We don't want to be too directive because we want the consultant to bring the ideas, right? And so that's kind of where we've headed on this project, and I hope that answers your question, Commissioner.
Just follow, so we'll know what the design speed goal would be at the 30% design?
Absolutely. That would be, as part of that discussion, the posted speed on a project like this, to be honest, is somewhat irrelevant. The design speed will then become the generating and the factor that really dictates how they move forward. And that will be decided at that 30% level.
Okay, good.
Commissioner Goldthorpe, thanks for your patience.
Thank you. Justin, you've described a whole lot of things that are incorporated in our expectations of what this consultant is going to do for us as per what Commissioner Hansen was asking for. Is this therefore a hard bid?
Commissioner Goldthorpe, typically design contracts, we wouldn't consider it a hard bid. These are negotiated contracts, so we have a negotiated amount. If we are to go above that amount, it requires a supplemental.
See, and I'm not assuming that we're going to, but I see so many of these contracts for services come back to us for additional funding. And sometimes it's only not because we've changed the scope so much, but they've changed who they do business with as subs. And their costs are going up. I don't care what happens with their costs. I want these bids as much as is humanly possible to be hard so that we can be efficient in the use of our funds for these plans.
And what I can say, Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, there are no changes to the amount of this contract that do not go through a clear analysis and review without some level of approval. There's no opportunity for that. The consultant can't change the cost without approval by ACHD.
Okay, well, unless there's some really substantial things that we require of them to do, just say no.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Hanson?
The one thing I didn't hear was at what point do we involve our advisory committees? Because what I'm hearing from them is the frustration that we involve them too late.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, do we go to them and say when we have 30% or when we have 70? I know the public involvement sessions happen after the 75%. So my suggestion might be, prior to the 75%, that there's some process by which their expertise could be incorporated into this, which actually might make it even more efficient.
Commissioners, so there's ample opportunities for public comment, and we don't always have public comment after 75%. In a case like this, as we're looking at this 30% stage, and we see that there may need to be a public involvement effort at that time or some sort of coordination with the advisory committees, we can certainly do that. Absolutely.
Madam President,
Commissioner Gold?
I would agree with what Commissioner Hanson is requesting, that we have some kind of standardized process where advisory committees are given the opportunity to review, like maybe hear from staff, review a project and provide feedback on it outside of, the public process that's open to the general public. I think that's what I'm hearing from Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I just want to confirm, Justin, because I don't know if it's from lack of sleep or whatever, so I'll take ownership for the fuzziness in my brain. But so do you have reservations about sharing the 30% design with advisory committees? I think that's the main question.
Madam President, members of the commission, I don't have reservations about sharing information with the public or the advisory committees. The issue is an issue of timing, efficiency of the project process, and the actual purpose of the advisory committees, which is to advise the commission, not necessarily to advise staff on specific projects. And I'm just stating this as stated in the bylaws of the advisory committees. And so if we are to formalize some kind of process where every project, there's an expectation that it is provided to the advisory committees. They only meet monthly. They have full agendas. We have hundreds of projects under consideration. It does give me pause that we will see some potential delays in the process if we were to go down that road. And in my interaction with the advisory committees, and they're wonderful, they're citizen volunteers. Oftentimes they are not unanimous in their ideas and support. There's really no clear way to determine if the advisory committee wants a specific theme without them using some sort of Robert's Rules of Order with motions and votes, potentially formal letters. So I'm just trying to be realistic about the functionality of that process. We have always brought all of these items to the commission. Our current practice right now is anytime there's a public involvement phase, and you get that memo from Diane Bevins every month, we provide those links, the renderings and the graphics that are available to the public. We've gone on walks with the advisory committees on those projects where they have shown interest, and that is always something we're willing to do. But I would say it would be a pretty significant change in our project process to formalize an ACHD advisory committee review almost as if they're a project team member at, let's say, 30%. I could see potential issues associated with that when it comes to timing, efficient decision-making, and such.
Thanks. All right.
So I'm just,
Commissioner Hanson.
let's figure this out, because I have received information from our advisory committees that they would, especially the chair of the committee who, bears most of the responsibility, figure out ways of gathering that insight that they might be able to provide, rather than at a certain point, especially maybe not on all projects, but perhaps the ones that would be particularly valuable in anticipation of what the public is. Because I think the perception from some of our advisory committees is that they are sort of in the pot with the rest of the general public. And so great, their advice is provided at that point, but there's a lot that's gone up to that point. I want us to continue this conversation, not necessarily about this scope of work or other scopes of work, but I think something has been surfaced and we should continue to talk about and refine that. And perhaps it's, as you point out, through the bylaws and description of what their mission is.
Yeah, I agree. We should talk about this at a different time. And I appreciate the directness, Justin, about the implications of if we're looking at this from systemically, right? And I think that there's probably some middle ground in terms of key projects, and there's got to be a way that doesn't disrupt the flow of staff and the consultants, that honors also their contributions. So, okay, all right. And this is a request for approval, right? We need a motion to approve this?
Yes.
Perfect. Is there a motion?
Yes. Madam Chairman, I would move that we approve the consulting agreement, project number 524014.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Justin. Item number 5, Desert Ave, Latigo Drive to Cole Road Consultant Agreement, approval project number 824021. This also is a request for approval.
Thank you, Madam President. Once again, same as the last item, just here attempting to get a consultant on board to start this project. I know there have been some questions about the project limits primarily. There's a little bit of background here on this project. It really stems from a request that came out of the Southwest Boise Neighborhood Plan. That plan identified a project segment primarily to the east of the New York Canal, which is what this project is, on the south side of Desert. And there's a few reasons for this, and I'll do my best to explain them. The canal is a kind of a natural breaking point. We look for points of, when you're defining a project, you look for kind of natural points to break projects into different phases or types. The canal presents a pretty significant breaking point here due to the facilities that exist on the canal, which there's only pedestrian facilities today on the north side of the canal. So to carry pedestrian facilities continuously along Desert, all the way to Maple Grove, we would have to do something right there at the canal, which would likely be very expensive just to figure that out. Now, is there a possibility of a separate bridge? Maybe, but for the purposes of this project, we chose the canal as the stopping point based on the neighborhood plan and the work that we did developing the project. There also is some significant differences on the south side of the roadway on Desert, on the east side versus the west side. On the west side, I'm not going to remember the street. It starts with an M. Missoula. Thank you, Commissioner. There's only one intersecting street on the south side when you're west of the canal, and everything else, it's just houses that back up to Desert. There's no intersecting streets, and there's no front-on housing. And so on the south side, on the west side of the canal, all of the pedestrian traffic is filtered up through Missoula, and then basically they cross, and there's a crossing there now, over to the north side, and then they make their way towards the school. So that's another reason why we felt like it was not unreasonable to just focus on the south side of Desert. to the east of the canal specifically for this project. Not to say that down the road there may be a desire to make the full connection. That would include potentially a pedestrian bridge or a widening of the existing bridge over the New York, excuse me, over the New York Canal. The final factor I'll mention is even if we were to make the connection all the way out to Maple Grove, today there are no facilities along Maple Grove in this segment, and so you're essentially connecting to nothing. There would still be a gap in a sense because you're not connecting to anything on Maple Grove. So that's kind of the thought process we went through. We thought that was consistent with the neighborhood plan and the recommendations that we've received. That being said, and I know Commissioner Hanson, you mentioned looking specifically at the crossing at Missoula. I think that's a reasonable thing that we can. I don't think we need to modify the scope today. I can assure you that we can look at that as part of this project. And that seems to be kind of a reasonable thing to do as part of this to kind of help mitigate that concern. So that's kind of the story behind this one. Glad to answer any other questions you may have.
Commissioner Hanson?
Thanks. I appreciate that very much. It makes sense because this is still within the 1 mile radius of 1.5 mile radius walking distance to the school. The kids do walk there. And I think it's important that intersection at Missoula is addressed, much as it's going to be at Latigo, I think that's how you pronounce it, on the other side, because you want those kids to cross on the sidewalk on the north side, even though they live on the south side. You want them to cross and then go over, and the school's on the north side. So just to sort of steer towards the one safe facility, which actually has, I think they're Jersey berries. There's a nice protection of that sidewalk. And I realize the canal is a big crossing, and it's one you don't want to get caught on. But if you go down and spend some time there, I'm told from the neighbors, kids do just dash across the street in their bikes in the street. The other is the sensitivity that I'm hearing from that neighborhood, because we are using Desert, because it has that bridge. We're using Desert as a detour during this whole Lake Hazel rebuild. It won't be calm again until we do all the Maple Grove stuff. And the Maple Grove intersection of Desert and Maple Grove is part of the Maple Grove project. So that part will be new and done, and those sidewalks off of that intersection will go somewhere. So it just sort of made sense that we continued them on. There's a little bit of south sidewalk that is done, presumably from when those homes were built. But I would really like that to be included in the scope of how we evaluate the kids from that side. They're kind of stuck there because they do go to Silver Sage, and then you cross Maple Grove and they go to another school. And then, of course, I have mentioned it's been requested by the neighborhood. One way to ease it is somehow some sort of project with the city, the school district, the neighborhood, ACHD getting a Amity doesn't cross. They're just asking for a pedestrian bridge up there. That's unrelated to this scope, but I see Christy Enselman is sitting in the audience, and she knows that's been on my list for a couple of years, and it's on the neighborhoods list. And so we're hoping that maybe we could do both roughly at the same time. So thank you. As long as I have that assurance that we're going to look at that little part of the neighborhood in this scoping, then I'm fine with it.
Okay, and I also want to make note, if there's no other questions, Mr. Anderson's point about the bridge, just the bridge as well, it's noted on this item. So, all right, is there a motion?
Yes.
Commissioner Goldberg.
Madam President, I would move that we approve project number 824021.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, that's the end of our regular agenda. We'll move into public communications. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission at this time? Welcome, Marissa. Yes, welcome, Marissa. State your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Marissa Keith. I am coming from you at Idaho Smart Growth, which is 280 North 8th Street in Boise. And I did send an email to several people at ACHD, but some may have received it and some sounds like did not receive it. So I am just here to formally invite the commission, staff, anybody who might be watching online to the World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims, which is always held the Sunday before Thanksgiving. This year, that is November 19th. So we will be meeting at 11 a.m. at the Capitol to do a bike ride / walk. And then from 12 to about 1 o'clock, we'll have guest speakers and families there. This day is sponsored by Idaho Smart Growth, specifically the Safe Routes to Schools program, the Boise Bicycle Project, and the Walk Bike Alliance. So I do have a flyer, if you would like that. I can do it.
I would love the information, make sure that's on the commission's calendar.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Marissa.
May I speak from a different hat now?
Of course you can.
I live at 3279 South Cloverdale, which is within the Southwest Ada County Alliance, Southwest Boise. I'm the president of the neighborhood association there. And I just wanted to say that our neighborhood association fully supports all of the improvements on Amity. We did have a child fatality there in 2019. And this is long overdue. So thank you so much for the efforts on that.
Thanks for sharing. Nancy.
Clancy Anderson, 4611 North Shirley Avenue, Boise. So this is a little bit of a history lesson. Kent claims those every once in a while, but I'm going to take it. So, Madam President and Commissioners, it was interesting. I found a older integrated 5-year work plan the other day, and it was interesting to see what community projects were considered back then. I was looking at the 2010 to 14 integrated 5-year work plan that was approved sometime in 2009. And a few of those projects caught my attention. These were on the list in 2009, but have either only been recently completed or on the list again, or have never been completed. So the first one is the Kootenai pedestrian improvements. That's what it was called back then. This project has been completed as a bike ped improvement plan in 2023, 14 years later. But, there was a crash in 2015 that may have been turned out differently had these improvements been made then. So that's just, and the next one is the Collister pedestrian improvements. They were predicted to be constructed in 2012. Obviously, I think the neighborhood pushed back quite a bit. And so they were approved in 2023 and will be constructed in 2028. So that's almost a 20-year gap. And that's, I live right off Collister. I bought my house because of that decision last December. That was one of the major reasons. So thank you. Hill Road bike lane improvements west of Pierce Park. And I think that was to make the north side a little bit wider for the bike lane there. It gets a little hairy around that curve. Those have never been completed. And I don't know if they've been on a integrated 5-year work plan since then. Another one, and this one involves ITD, so that's a bit of a problem, but was the Glenwood Riverside sidewalk improvements from Riverside to the bridge. It was predicted to be constructed in 2012, but nothing's ever been done to this day. And that is a big gap in the sidewalk right there. I then found the next years and that was approved in 2010, and community projects only had 2 projects listed on it. I'm not sure what happened that year, but it did not include any of the above. So ACHD's recent focus on projects for walking and biking are much appreciated. And I thank ACHD and the commission for making sure there are more safe places to walk and bike in Ada County.
Thanks, Clancy. I appreciate that. All right. Is there anyone online? All right. Well, with that, meeting is adjourned. Do we need a little break at all, guys? Are we ready to go through it? Take 5. You want to take 5? Okay. So we'll take a quick break, and then we'll get onto our post-commission agenda. Okay, all right, we're coming back. All right. It's 1:31. Welcome back to our post-commission agenda. We've got 3 items left to go today, and our first one is the Linda Road, Pine Ave, Ustick Road Concept Update Staff Report. Welcome, Brooke. We're excited to see you.
Thank you, Madam President and Commission. I'm glad to be up here to present to you and give you a briefing. Just to recap and just kind of set some expectations of what you're going to get during this presentation today. I am providing an update on the Linda Road, Pine to Ustick. However, during today's presentation, I'm primarily focusing only on one segment. And that is because this segment is what we consider the pinch point along the corridor. I bring this presentation to you today in anticipation to a public outreach effort that is going to be occurring in December. Sorry. Just to quickly recap the project and the objectives. The objective is really to provide a street that provides for all users. That includes bikes and peds. When I presented to you previously, the safety and function land use, as well as the timing, I went in more depth. Today, I just really want to quickly update you on what I've done since we last met. During the last couple of weeks, I have met with property owners in evening meetings who reside between Chateau as well as Sandalwood. So these are folks who are what we consider in that pinch point. I have met with them. We have gone over the project itself. We've talked about the timing. In addition to that, we've answered any questions. And why we went to this level of engagement, which we do not typically do at this concept level, is because no matter what option we bring forward, there is likely to be property impacts. So these evening meetings took place, and we were able to answer any questions they may have, talk about any right-of-way impacts. In addition to that, following today's presentation and starting next week, we'll have additional meetings with those property owners, and that is to show them the alternatives. They haven't seen the alternatives yet. We wanted you to see them first and give you a glimpse. The study area, just to recap, is no further north than Ustick Road and no further south than West Pine. As I've highlighted before, the local attractors along this corridor are Tolley Park, the Barben Morgan Elementary School, as well as the high school. But as I highlighted when I first the introduction in today's meeting, I will only be discussing the segment of Linda Road between Chateau and Sandalwood, and you see that picture before you. I will also want to spend a moment on this picture is because you can see all the front-on housing that is currently in place. So this is very unique to this location, while we're spending a little bit of time on it today. In addition to that, why I'd like to have this meeting is we're introducing a new concept, the residential shared street. I am before you to give you a glimpse of what this looks like because we have not applied this approach to a project at this scale. We do have somewhat of an example there at Whitewater Park Boulevard. So just to recap, what is a residential shared street? You can oftentimes call it a frontage road. This is a space that is shared by bikes, peds, as well as vehicles. To achieve a residential shared street, we have to textured or pervious pavement that is flush with the curb. Why we are doing that is because we really want to reinforce pedestrian priority nature of the street. We also add other elements like traffic calming to help define that shared space, appropriate signage as you enter it. And lastly, bikes will operate in a two-way fashion because speeds are greatly reduced. You'll see there with the example Whitewater Park Boulevard, that shared space or frontage road only provides for residents who are fronting Whitewater Park Boulevard. I show you this and introduce you to this concept because in the alternatives I'm going to present before you, 2 of them have the residential shared street concept applied to them. Let's start with our first one. So our first concept, our number 1, 3 lanes with a shared use road. In this, you see that we've making a suggestion that we put in 2 roundabouts, one there at Chateau, the other one at Sandalwood. You're going to see in this alternative before you, shared use road provides access to those who are on the east side and those who are on the west side. They're one-way roads. And to gain access to that shared road, the property owners would have to go around the roundabout and then they gain access if they're going the opposite direction. So say they wanted to go north, they would actually have to go up around the roundabout and then traverse into the neighborhood. We are proposing this one as one of the alternatives because this footprint is the smallest of the footprints for consideration. The unique context that we see is we have a lot of front-on housing. And so one of the alternatives we wanted to put forward was an alternative that did not impact the property owners adjacent to it as much. So you're going to see what that cross section looks like there. You're going to see something different about this one as opposed to the one I'll show you here in a moment. But for us to minimize property impacts on the east side, you're only going to see a shared use road. That would be for bikes, peds, as well as vehicles. On the west side, because we have a little bit more space, you're also going to see a shared use road. In addition to that, a concrete ribbon that could behave as an additional sidewalk space. So essentially you've got 16 feet. Any further distance of that footprint is when we start to impact our adjacent property owners. So this is an alternative where we are utilizing a shared use road as an option to minimize property impacts. Concept 2 is your standard 5 lanes. This is 2 through lanes in each direction. In addition to that, you have that left turn lane. You have landscape medians that we're applying to this, but also to highlight, this is the existing condition that is north of U-Stick. This footprint is our largest footprint, and you're going to see the property impacts there, the hatch markings. Each one of those properties, should this be the option that moves forward, would have to be purchased. This is what that cross section looks like. You've got a multi-use pathway on both sides because we now have the available space in which to offer that. In addition to that, the 2 drive lanes, 2 through lanes going in both direction, and the landscape median there in the middle. The last option I'll be showing you today is concept number 3. It's the 5 lanes with a shared use road. Again, you're going to see the installation of both a roundabout at Chateau as well as one at Sandalwood. Those are traffic calming measures, especially because at this location along the corridor, this is where Barber Elementary School is. So we are making that suggestion. What you're going to see in this depiction is all the properties are on the east side. For us to achieve the 5 lanes, all the properties on the east side would have to be purchased. However, that allows us to put the shared use roadway there on the west side, providing connection and preserving some additional homes. The cross section looks as before you. You've got that shared use roadway, you've got that concrete ribbon, you've got 2 through lanes in each direction, and on the east side, you have the installation of a multi-use pathway. The path to adoption. So before you, we have been out to the public already back in December 2022. We introduced the project, engaged folks in a survey. Since then, we have gone through several renderings and several alternatives to get us to where we are at today. With the goal is to create an option that provides for bikes and peds to be able to navigate through this space while also minimizing property impacts the best we can. In October, I was before you to give you a glimpse of this project to kick it off. Since then, as I've highlighted, we've already been in front of our property owners, interviewing with them, and I'll do that again starting next week. In December, we will be going before the Meridian Transportation Committee to show them these alternatives. We'll be going before the Meridian City Council on December 4th to show them these alternatives. And then on December 6th, we open it up for a virtual open house where we invite the public as well as the community in the neighborhoods to help us make a determination which alternative they'd like to see move forward. In January, I'll check back in with you. And then the idea is that in spring of 2024, we'll be before you for consideration for adoption. This concludes the session. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Bree. Really appreciate this. Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Brooke, I can't really imagine the amount of traffic that's going to be on Linder once the overpass is completed. But I do know that since it'll be the longest north-south corridor in the county, that it could be a lot. Which of these particular designs does staff feel will accommodate the most traffic?
Madam President and Commissioner Goldthorpe, the alternatives are before the public. The staff hasn't weighed in on which one's going to be able to provide the largest volume of capacity. Certainly, when we bring this forward to the public and generate some response, we'll have some additional data at that point to provide. But as of today, we haven't weighed in on which option we think is going to provide for the largest capacity through the corridor.
You think that'll be a pretty important consideration, though?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, it certainly is a consideration of which alternative should move forward. Right now, we're just taking these to the public to generate some feedback of the alternatives and really try to look for some alternatives that provide for less property impacts, accommodate the vehicles and the volumes that we anticipate. In addition to that, take into consideration the local attractors. But that is definitely one of the data points that we will be presenting to the public come December.
Sure.
Thank you, Brooke. I noticed Brian with the City of Meridian is on here, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Brian, but I kind of want to. I just want to see if you have any, questions. I'm really pleased with having a third option, Brooke, and giving that to you guys to get your sense of what you guys would like to see. But I want to make one particular question for you, Brian. Is I appreciated you putting in like the landscape medians, especially with this being such a high residential area in that corridor. And I just want to make sure that that type of investment and enhancement is recognized by you guys as well, because I think that's a really important feature that we wanted to call out. So Brian, any observations that you want to share?
Madam President, I think Commissioner Goldthorpe said it pretty well. This is a very unique corridor. It's not just properties being acquired that's sort of a concern. It's what happens to the remaining properties afterwards and sort of fears of degradation there. And I think Brooks really thought outside the box and encouraged her team to think outside the box and come up with something that maybe enhances that. I don't know what the best solution is, but I'm looking forward to public involvement now.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, Madam President. Thanks, Brooke, for your presentation. I have a couple of thoughts. I wonder if you can bring up the concept images again. I mean, thought number one, I have to admit, I'm inclined to agree and maybe go further than what Commissioner Goldthorpe said. I have to admit, I cannot imagine that a 3-lane section would be adequate for this. I just can't imagine that. Second, with these, what do we call it now? It's a shared use road. On the west side, so it's on the top of this image we're looking at here, with the shared use road and the sidewalk in this or any of the other options, what length of driveways would be left for those homes? It would seem to me, right now they've barely got enough. I mean, their driveways aren't very long at the moment. Would they be able to park a car in the driveway or not? It seems to me unlikely.
Madam President and Commissioner McKinney, that is a very good question, and thank you. We did look into the length of their driveway. Their current existing conditions of the driveway are actually fairly long. Many of them exceed 25 to almost 30 feet. And primarily it's because all of those properties on the west side have built into the public right-of-way by approximately anywhere from like 5 to 10 feet. So those driveways in its existing conditions are fairly long. Putting this forward and recognizing, are they going to be able to park their vehicle into their driveway? We went and measured several of those. It was aerial image, but back of the sidewalk, they will have 20 feet minimum of available parking space available to them. And so we did look into that as a consideration, because ultimately what we didn't want to do was provide an alternative where some people may necessarily lose their parking, and then that's not a livable option. They certainly won't be able to use their homes. So we took that into account, and I double checked again last night to make sure that that is the case. And I have verified we have provided for adequate parking and driveways along the corridor.
And is that also true for the 5-lane section alternatives?
Madam President and Commissioner McKinney, yes, that is the case.
Okay. Now, let's see then.
Madam President, Commissioner
Sure.
McKinney, if I can add to that. In the 5-lane alternative, we are acquiring the properties to the east.
Mhm.
So there is available space for us to expand and provide for additional space for those on the west side. But initially, we have looked at the property driveways and we have adequate space. Acquiring that additional properties on the east actually provides for more opportunity to look for other types of buffer spaces, and will be one of the considerations that we move forward in as we move this. If that is an alternative that moves forward, we will take that into account.
One thought that occurs to me as I consider this project is that those properties on the west, with all those front-on driveways. It strikes me, and this is looking down the road, and of course, none of us really have a perfect crystal ball, but it strikes me that assuming we ultimately have a 5-lane section here, which I think is very likely, those properties on the west, even if we do save them, I think it's a good chance that over time, that land will likely be redeveloped simply because, the residents, living immediately adjacent to a 5-lane section over time may decide, it's not as attractive a place anymore. That's not something we can guarantee, but it's something to think about. If we're going to great expense and length to save some expense here, and then in the 10 years following, all those houses are gone anyway, that's at least something we ought to think about as a possibility. It's going to cost a lot no matter which way we do it. I'm not certain that the roundabout at Chateau Drive is a good idea, simply because that's a heavy, and we saw it when we walked it, that's a heavy school crossing area, and drivers approaching roundabouts a lot of times are not as cautious as if there's a light stopping them. Naturally, of course, we would have pedestrian signals there, but that's just one concern. I'm in favor of roundabouts. I like roundabouts, but in a place like this, it might be worth considering otherwise. And then, could we look at the next option? Okay, so that's the option where we go through and we just buy up the property needed to make it a 5-lane section. And then that property on the east and west sides of the road, then we would own it. And if it were to redevelop, ACHD would then be in the position of perhaps selling it to developers who might put in professional office space or something like that along the way. So in any case, that's one thing to consider. If we're only buying a few properties, then they may, the redevelopment may simply want to build another residence, which might make it actually more difficult to sell. Okay, and then the third option. So here we've got roundabouts and a 5-lane section with the shared street on the west. Okay. Well, no matter which way we go, it's going to be expensive. I wonder if we ought to just bite the bullet and go with the 5-lane sort of option number 2. Anyway, that's my initial thought.
We're a little, it's early, but thank you, Brooke. I really appreciate the approach again of having options, because I think the public appreciates that, our city partners appreciate that, we appreciate that. But yeah, Commissioner Hanson, did you have something?
Yeah, I do. I guess I approach this as if I was living there, and I spent time walking up and down that street. I'm super disappointed. I thought we were going to take a look at what this neighborhood between Sawtooth School and the high school could become. And instead, we've created, I think, by narrowing it down to just this short little segment, that you're the obstacle or the pinch point, you're the burden. And we've had some experience in this county on Curtis Road that if we say, oh, well, you're kind of the burden, but we funnel traffic north and south of it. I tend to agree with Commissioner McKinney. The pressure will be there, because we haven't considered the neighborhood to the north, we haven't considered the neighborhood to the south, and yet we're saying you're the ones who are the problem, and there'll be a huge amount of pressure to say, why did you spend so much money building it this way when we want to get through? If you have already determined the value of these neighborhoods and these schools are not that important, it's more important to move traffic through like we do on Meridian Road and on 10 Mile, then let's just do it that way from the start. I was hoping, and I gave notes to the staff, I gave notes to the advisory committee from after the walk, that we would take this approach. What do we want the neighborhood to look like? And then what would a neighborhood residential arterial look like? and we don't do that. And I suggest it should start from north of Sawtooth at Monument and go all the way down. And then it becomes, this is about the neighborhood and about the investments Meridian is making in the neighborhood. Present that and say, here's the neighborhood. The points at which you enter the neighborhood are north of one school and south of another. And then there's a multi-use movement of people through all means. And then you give another alternative and said, look, this is like 10 Mile. This is what we would do. You choose. There's only going to be one road over the interstate, which you can safely go over to walk and bike, and that's Linder. So it would connect to that one point. But at this point, I just have a huge problem with the decision that we have made and not allowed the neighborhood and the city to grapple with this first and say, what do you want? Here's our two options. Is a neighborhood street, and I'm blessed because I represent a part of this county where we have something called Boise Avenue that functions as a neighborhood residential arterial, but we also have Park Center on one side and Federal Way on another. And so we have these options and the value of that neighborhood. Lots of traffic can move on it. Lots and lots and lots of traffic can move on it, but also people can safely walk and bike and cross. And so, I just have a problem with the approach that we've taken to say the problem is between Chateau and Sandalwood, and here's your pinch point. And I can predict the direction we will go if we say, oh, we're going to make it this little, but try to split the baby after we've invested in all that. I'm going to agree with Commissioner McKinney. The pressure will be there to just rip it all out and put a 5-lane, and the heck with the value of those properties, because we've already determined north of that, north of Sandalwood, south of Chateau, or the other way around, is for traffic primarily. So, I have based upon my observations and the input that I gave, which don't seem to have been relevant, I have a huge problem with moving forward on the way we're approaching this. I would recommend going back to the drawing board, put it back in the neighborhood's hands and the city's hands and say, what do you want? We'll give you two options instead of presupposing, okay, we've already decided this is really just going to be a 5-lane. So that's my feeling. And I had to be honest about how I feel about this. It's not my district. I don't represent that area, and I'm just going to fight to protect the neighborhood arterials in the area I represent.
Thanks, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of eats at me is that, and it's not that we've just taken this particular stretch and called it a pinch point, because as you know, right there by the high school, between the high school and Cherry Lane, is a huge pinch point on Linder. And I would, just because I'm kind of a simple guy, would love seeing the concept go from Pine to Eustic or from Pine to Chateau, so that I could more easily see in my mind what this whole thing might look like. And it might be easier for the city to make their recommendations that way too.
Madam President, Commission, maybe there's some clarifying opportunity here I'd like to provide. The presentation today was to give you a glimpse of a new concept that we're applying to Linder. The concept that is going out to the public, the 3 alternatives, does incorporate improvements from Eustic to Pine. The reason I focused today's presentation primarily on that one location was because what we didn't want to do was introduce a new treatment option that we haven't applied on previous concepts. We didn't want to take that to the public before coming to you first. The whole corridor from Pine to Eustic does have 3 distinct alternatives that we are taking to the public, with 3 distinct treatment options that you can see applied through the whole corridor, taking into account the context sensitivity piece of each phase or each segment of that corridor. So while today I'm only showing you a glimpse of one segment of Linder, rest assured we are taking 3 alternatives that have improvements, new treatment options through the whole corridor for your consideration, and more importantly, for the public's consideration to weigh in on this in December, once we already go to the City of Meridian the City of Meridian's Transportation Committee, and then publicly shortly thereafter for the public engagement phase. So 3 alternatives are being moved forward for the whole corridor from Pine to Ustick. Today, I just wanted to focus on one glimpse because the new concept we're bringing to you, you haven't seen applied to concepts previously.
Okay, I'm really relieved because I thought you just ran out of toner. But so when we go to the city and to the public, we'll have the whole corridor, the pretty pictures and everything.
Madam President and Commissioner Goldthorpe, yes, you will have the whole corridor. They will weigh in on the whole corridor from Pine to Ustick.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Madam President.
Commissioner Gold.
Thanks. So, Brooke, can you speak to the engagement that you've done with the neighbors and the city up to this point then?
Certainly. Madam President and Commissioner Gold, we have shortly thereafter, when we presented this project to you, we started reaching out. I sent all of the property owners along that segment between Chateau and Sandalwood, because along the corridor, those are the ones that no matter what alternative we move forward, will have property impacts. And as a courtesy, we sent them a letter saying, here's the meeting times, evening meetings, log online and let's talk. And really what I was doing was introducing myself as somebody that they can contact through this whole process. Is in addition to that, the project itself. I did not want them to get to the public engagement phase of this project and see that their house is impacted by these alternatives. All of the ones in which we've spoken with are very gracious for this additional time that we've given them. In addition to, I'll be meeting with them again next week, starting next week, evening meetings all the way up until the actual virtual PIM, where I'll be presenting to them these alternatives. I think it's fair to them, because their properties will be impacted, that they get a glimpse of this before the public does. In addition to that, the City of Meridian has been at the table from the start of this project. We've gone back and forth on alternatives and concept renderings, and we have been in depth discussions regarding these. We all agree that these 3 alternatives, as a team who will be reviewing this next week, as a team should be considered by the public. And lastly, the public engagement phase I'll be doing with the City of Meridian, their Transportation Committee on December 4th, the Meridian City Council on the 5th, and then I will open it up to the public. So public engagement, in particular to property owners along this corridor who will be impacted, was at the forefront of my approach from the get-go.
And I just, can I add one question? Are you done? Sorry. Will you be presenting the examples for the entire corridor in those presentations? I just wanted to make sure.
Madam President and Commission, we will be taking all of the corridor to the City of Meridian as well as to the Transportation Committee. And primarily it's because it's their opportunity to weigh in on it prior to going to the public.
Thank you.
Madam President, so the 3 things that you showed us today are pieces of the 3 larger concepts that you're taking out to the public. And so then the commission won't have an opportunity to see all 3 of those in their entirety prior to going out to the public. Is that correct?
Madam President and Commissioner Gold, I don't have it scheduled to come back before you to show you the whole stretch. We did that courtesy to the City of Meridian, their Transportation Committee, because we want them to weigh in before it goes to the public. Why our presentation was today is because we're trying a new concept, and that new concept is that shared use roadway, and that's new to this commission, and thus we wanted to spend a little bit of extra time going over that concept today.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
just a couple more questions, Brooke, if I may. In your preliminary meetings with these property owners, can you give us, first of all, a sense what proportion of the potentially affected homes along Linder Road in this section are owner occupied versus rentals?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, a very good question. We looked into each one of those homes to make that determination, and we were surprised to find many of them are owner occupied. In particular, the homeowners that reside on the west side, the ones where we're preserving in the 5 lanes, those folks, many of them have been there since the initial development of the area. Many of them are seniors, and many of them would like to see that they still stay in their homes. However, the ones on the west side of the property, on the east side of Linder, Those two are property owned. Many of those folks have recently moved into their homes. And so it's quite an interesting dynamic that we've got going. And so that extra special attention we've been spending with the property owners, I think has been incredibly valuable in making a determination of which alternatives as a team we should move forward.
Okay, so when you say many of them on the west side, many are owner occupants, about what proportion? Is it the majority? Is it a little less than a majority?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I want to say it's the majority. I think
majority.
we spoke with one property where it was a rental. Unlike on the flip side, on the east side, there are a few more rentals scattered in there and homeowners who've been there for a less amount of time. But it's surprisingly, a number of them are owner occupied.
Okay. And then, so it's probably too early to tell, but it sounds like what you're saying is at least those that are owner occupied, they seem less likely to want to sell than would be, say, where you've got rental properties or shorter term owners.
Madam President and Mr. McKinney, my initial observation is yes, these people would like to be able to stay in their home. I met with them and many of them brought their families to the meetings, primarily because they wanted their families to weigh in on it. And so we had many meetings where it wasn't just the property owner as much as it was them and their kids and their grandparents who were weighing in on this. And so my initial observation is those who reside on the east side on the west side certainly want to reside there longer.
All right, great, thank you.
This is starting to remind me of the discussions we've had for the Locust Grove and Amity project. There's some significant feelings and personal deals that we need to consider. So good luck. You should take Brian with you and give him a big vest that has a bullseye on it.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you,
Great
Madam
presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian, for letting me tap you to come on. So I appreciate that. All right, the second item is the winter utility protocols. Welcome, Christy. Is she here? Oh, there she is. It's like I didn't see you for a moment. I was like, oh, did she just bounce?
Hello, Madam President, Commissioners, Christy Little, Development Services Manager. I changed the title of this briefing just slightly from what it is on the agenda. Commissioner Goldthorpe requested this discussion today. I think based on the number of TELUS we have coming in regarding work in 5 Mile with Veolia, remembering last winter's debacle with Intermountain Gas and their work throughout the winter. So I just have a couple slides. We can talk through them and get you on to your next agenda item. So just a reminder for you and for the public, for work in ACHD right-of-way, it basically boils down to 3 different types of permits. We've got our own ACHD projects. We've got a good majority of our permits are utilities.
No, we are. Yeah. Keep going.
A good majority of our permits are related to utilities. So these could be extensions of utilities and to newly developing areas that the cities, we've seen a lot in CUNA and Meridian, cities extending sewer and water. This could be replacement of aging utility facilities like Veolia has on 5 Mile right now. Or what we see a lot of, just direct utility services to individual lots. So on a much smaller scale. And then the other type of permits we have are related to frontage improvements for development requirements. Overall, if you take out the ACHD projects in development services, we, in this last fiscal year, processed 3,500 permits to work in the right-of-way. So I want to give you a quick update on the Veolia project on 5 Mile. We met with the Veolia team and the director on Monday, and they had really great news to share with us. I didn't write down all their specific percentages, but there was nothing below like 80% as far as where they are with completion. It's very difficult for us to explain to the public why certain phases of this project were done at certain times. but a lot of this one had to do with their irrigation crossings. And we'll get into irrigation in general here in a minute. But by tomorrow, we should have the segment of 5 Mile between Overland and Victory will be open. And then south of Victory, we will see closure so that they can then extend that last piece of their project. This doesn't mean that we won't have lane restrictions and flagging in the future as they do the individual tie-ins to each lot, but they are making really good progress. This project has been so time-consuming is really the number and location of utilities that are already in 5 Mile. So in this case, they're replacing a water line, but the existing water line has to remain in place until the new system is fully functional. So the corridor that's underneath the roadway for water is already being utilized by their existing facility. So they're having to squeeze in the new facility between their existing water facility and an existing pressurized sewer system and a regular sewer system. So there's not a lot of room in the roadway in that utility corridor. So they've really had to go slow and be careful, and they've done a really great job. We haven't had any major utility strikes and nobody's gone without service. So I think the other great thing, I just wanted they gave kudos to our team, particularly Grayson and Ken, they're zone inspectors in my department, and they've been out there day and night, keeping an eye on things and making sure we've got adequate traffic control and that things are moving along. But also kudos to Veolia. It was with them that we first tried implementing put it back on them approach, and we encouraged and requested that they do a lot of public outreach, and they've really just done a great job. They have one staff person that's in their public relations department. She's been the one that's knocking on doors, talking to businesses. They've sent out reverse 911 type calls. They've done a really great job coordinating with our own communications team. So I know it's been painful to those in the area, but I think overall it's been a success, and this part of town will benefit from their new facilities.
Madam President, one of the things I've noticed on I no longer have access to Facebook, but on Nextdoor there's a lot of concern, as it were, from the neighborhoods south of the project, and a little bit on both sides. Is there any way that we can put what you have just said out with our communications team on the other platforms so that people will actually understand what's happening?
I'm sure we can do that.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
While we're talking about Southwest Boise and Ada County, it brings up, we really do our best with those 3,500 permits to not detour traffic to an already marked detour route. We try to make sure that parallel routes are unaffected. But sometimes we get into situations where that's just not feasible. And irrigation season is one of them. So here we are right in the middle of irrigation season. Anyone that has any crossing or bridge or any work regarding a waterway, that work has to be done when the water is out. So we're talking October through March. And so I do expect that we'll see an increased number of telests, just like we do every time of year. And it's just an unfortunate event. So it does mean that we have overlapping permits and more disruption to those in our county. We recognize that, but we are so limited by time. You can't just build a bridge overnight, and contractors really do need that whole window sometimes. So we really do our best, even though it might not feel like it some days. But as far as other winter challenges go, so of course, weather. And the question we get this time of year is, well, how long are the batch plants going to be open? How long are we going to have asphalt? And it really is dependent on temperatures. Sometimes we've been able to pave through January. Sometimes, it's been about now when the batch plants have closed. But for hot mix, that can be placed when the temperatures are 40 degrees and rising. So when we get into a situation where we're not there for the foreseeable future, the batch plants will close down. Interesting to note, we often also get questions about, well, they closed down because we had a cold snap, but it looks like next week it's going to be 50. It takes 4 to 6 weeks approximately for annual maintenance to occur at those plants. And so oftentimes when it's easy for me to say, turn that baby back on, let's get to paving, it's just not that simple. In addition, the cost just to turn a plant on is $5,000, and that doesn't include anything else. So it's also a strategic business decision for them if they're outside of that plant maintenance. It's just not as easy as flipping the switch sometimes. So what we do experience then is once those plants shut down because of the temperatures, we're not able to use the hot mix, we're using the cold mix. Cold mix is what our maintenance crews use to fill potholes. So depending on the size and type of cut in the asphalt, sometimes the cold mix stays well, sometimes it doesn't. It also depends on the amount of snow and how much plowing we're having to do. And so we really do find that there are just some, depending on the work being done, some of it holds better than others. So this is what we're going to do. This is what we've tried in the past, but we're going to be a little more rigid with it this year. So we will require daily inspections. So for example, out on 5 Mile, we will expect that they have one of their inspectors driving the corridor every day until if they get into a situation where they've got some temporary paving every day. And if they see something that needs to be fixed, it'll have to be fixed with cold patch, but it will be fixed. Our policy does allow us to, once a project has been completed, either a small utility cut or some developer frontage improvements, our policy does allow us to not assess fees for that duration between when they finish the work with a temporary patch until they come back to finish the work in its final with a hot mix. So our approach this year is going to be that for these larger projects, if we see that they're not maintaining their cold mix on a regular basis and we're starting to get a lot of complaints, we will just start assessing them daily fees for use of our right-of-way until the temperatures are up and the batch plants are running. That gives them an incentive to make sure that they're maintaining their cold patches in our right-of-way. We hope that will, we hope to see some improvement and fewer complaints this winter. So we're going to give that a try. And then, of course, the other component, Commissioner Goldthorpe, you already touched on it, and that is communicating and educating our constituents and sharing with them the challenges that we face. We understand it's not fun to drive down the road and hit a rough patch. And my inspection team will be working really closely with the contractors this winter to alleviate those as much as possible.
President.
Yeah, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, so just a quick question. I don't know how similar the 5 Mile project is with the Cloverdale wreck that was last winter. Is the kind of equipment that is being used on 5 Mile more friendly to the asphalt that already exists, and as opposed to the Sherman tank metal treads that were used last year on Cloverdale that tore it all up?
Yeah, we can't really, Commissioner Goldthorpe, Madam President, we can't really compare apples to oranges with that. You know, a lot of it too is dependent on just the condition of the pavement and the road base, and that varies from roadway to roadway, in addition to the, machinery being used. So I can't answer that question, but other than it just varies.
So where the cut was in the hot or cold patch that goes on, we still like to see the rest of the road left in the same condition they found it, correct?
Oh, that's correct.
Okay, because that's not what happened last year. Yeah. That's good.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, it's more of a comment. I think there was a recent article that was just posted about the impact of all of the construction in downtown Boise. And I think this is a really timely work session because, between CCDC, utilities, construction, or us, there has been a massive impact on those businesses. And of course, I think we get lumped in and everyone assumes that it's always us. And I've gotten some requests from people around, being more proactive about distinguishing who's doing what and consistently, because especially, things are constantly on various groups across all different platforms. It's an impossible task to keep tabs on all of it, but I think this issue, as we continue to grow, is going to continue to get complicated, especially as we get the influx of federal dollars and all these other it's just going to continue to become complicated. And so I guess my point to you, Christy, and to the rest of the staff is, I think what we're doing now is really great, but we have to continue to look beyond how we do it now to see how we can, one, communicate as best we can with the population, our populace, about who's doing what and those things. I think just some of the things that you shared, I'm like, oh yeah, the irrigation, that makes sense, and that's tricky, and adds another monkey wrench in all of this. So I think the more we can educate and get in the front of all this, I think it'll pay off in the end and continue to develop and maintain that trust with our constituents, who are rightfully so just frustrated. And if we don't do it, they're also frustrated. So anyway, that's just my point, Christy.
Thank you, Madam President. That reminded me of two things. One, with regard to the mall area in downtown Boise, just so that you know, we actually do have a policy that addresses construction during holiday season. While it may upset some contractors, we really do try to limit the number of disruptions in the major retail areas, which now includes the Village and Meridian. Downtown Boise is going to be a little bit difficult this winter, just because of the size of the projects that are down there and the type of the project. But I just want you to know that our staff has extra eyes and consideration for those business owners during this, and customers during this particular season. And then I mentioned that Veolia really took off and did a lot of legwork reaching out to the public, and has continued to do that. And we are continuing to require that of developers and contractors for larger type projects. And so some of them are, we've got one downtown, where they're working with the city and CCDC to identify affected business owners. It's really just about the increased communication. And part of it is taking just a little bit of the load off us here and putting some of the onus on those that need to get into the right of way.
Absolutely. All right.
Cool.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
All right, we just have one more item. It's an executive session. So with that, we'll see everyone in December.